My family skipped my wedding, calling it trivial. Weeks later, my mom posted Hawaii trip videos with my brother. A month later, they called, worried about unpaid loans. I told them, "Don't contact me about trivial matters," and hung up. Silence never felt so sweet. My name is Autumn, I'm 29, and my wedding day? It was supposed to be perfect. I mean, I wasn't born with a silver spoon, but I'd worked my tail off building a rewarding nursing career, and I'd found the kind of true love with Ethan that people write songs about. But as I walked down that aisle, my heart both soaring and sinking, I couldn't help but notice those 2 empty seats in the very front row. The ones reserved for my parents. They weren't there. They chose a Hawaiian vacation with my brother Thomas and his family instead. My father's words echoed in my head, a cruel whisper from just weeks before. It's just a trivial event for someone at the bottom. That hurt. Oh, that hurt more than anything I'd ever experienced. Or so I thought. Because just 1 month later, the phone rang, and they weren't calling to apologize. They were calling about loan payments they'd missed. Suddenly, the money I'd lent them years ago, the money they'd scoffed at as a gift, that money mattered. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I always felt like there was this unspoken caste system in our family. My parents, Diana and Richard Parker, never even tried to hide their preference for my older brother, Thomas. He was their golden child, pure and simple. From the moment he announced he'd follow in my father's footsteps and get a business degree, he was untouchable. Thomas AC'd everything, graduated from some fancy university, and walked right into a corporate job at a Fortune 500 company. By 30, he'd married Grace, a woman my parents adored for her social connections and family background. Within 3 years, they had 2 absolutely perfect children, Emma and Liam, completing what my parents saw as the ideal family picture. Me? I found my passion in healthcare. Volunteering at a local hospital in high school, I just connected with patients. I saw the tangible difference I could make in their lives, and it gave me purpose. But when I told my dad I wanted to be a nurse, his disappointment was just palpable. Nursing? He scoffed. All that potential wasted on changing bedpans? You could be running companies, Autumn. My mother was more subtle, but just as dismissive. It's a respectable job, I suppose, she'd sigh. But you've always settled for less than you could achieve. The difference in how they treated us was glaringly obvious during every milestone. For Thomas's 20th birthday, they surprised him with a brand new car. For mine, a gift card to a department store. When Thomas got promoted, they threw an elaborate dinner party, invited all their friends. When I graduated with honors from nursing school, they showed up for the ceremony, but left immediately after, muttering about a barbecue they couldn't miss. When Thomas bought his house, our parents contributed a generous down payment, a proper start in life. When Ethan and I started looking at modest homes, my mother actually suggested we live within our means and start with an apartment. Despite all of it, I held on. I kept trying. I visited monthly for family dinners, sent thoughtful gifts, called regularly. I truly believed family was family no matter what. 3 years ago, that belief was put to the ultimate test. My parents called me totally panicked. They'd made some terrible investment decisions and were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank was threatening foreclosure if they didn't come up with $25,000 immediately. "We've already asked Thomas," my father explained, sounding defeated. But with the kids' private school tuition and their new vacation home expenses, he just can't help right now. Ethan and I had been saving diligently for years, building a modest nest egg we hoped would be our own house down payment. After talking it over, we decided I'd loan them the money. "We'll pay you back," my mother promised as I transferred the funds. $600 every month until it's paid off. I insisted on putting the agreement in writing. Not because I didn't trust them, but because $25,000 was huge for me. My father seemed offended, but Mom convinced him it was reasonable. We signed a simple contract outlining the terms. I kept a copy. For almost 3 years, they made those payments like clockwork. $600 would appear in my account, usually on the 5th or 6th. I was so proud I could help. It even felt like it brought us closer. My father called me occasionally just to chat, something he'd rarely done before. When Ethan and I got serious, my parents were politely interested, never enthusiastic. Ethan was a kindergarten teacher, gentle and endlessly patient. Qualities I adored, but my parents found unimpressive. "A teacher?" my mother had asked when I first mentioned him. "Well, I suppose someone has to do it." Ethan and I met volunteering at a children's hospital. His dedication, his natural way with kids, he captivated me. Within a year, we were inseparable. I knew he was the one. Your brother married into the Wilson family, my mother would frequently remind me. Grace's father golfs with the governor, you know. She never mentioned that Thomas and Grace's relationship seemed more like a business arrangement than a love match. They were perfect for social media, for family gatherings. But alone, they barely spoke. Ethan and I, though, we could talk for hours about everything and nothing. He supported my career ambitions wholeheartedly, and I cheered him on as he developed innovative teaching methods. We weren't wealthy, but we were building a life rich in purpose and mutual respect. As our relationship grew serious, I desperately hoped my parents would finally see the value in the life I was creating. I hoped they'd see that success could be measured in more than just financial terms or social status. I would soon learn how misplaced those hopes were. Ethan proposed on a Tuesday afternoon right in the pediatric ward where I worked. He'd coordinated with my colleagues and the kids I cared for. Each one held a hand-drawn sign spelling out, "Will you marry me?" as I made my rounds. By the time I reached my last patient room, Ethan was waiting on one knee, surrounded by smiling children and teary-eyed coworkers. It wasn't grand or expensive, but it was perfectly us. Thoughtful, heartfelt, centered around the work we both loved. That evening, I called my parents, so excited to share the news. He proposed at the hospital? My mother asked, disapproval dripping from every word. Thomas proposed to Grace at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, you know. Private dinner, string quartet. Still, I tried to involve her. I invited her dress shopping. She claimed a standing bridge club appointment she couldn't reschedule. My future mother-in-law, Margaret, came instead. She cried when I found my dress, a simple but elegant A-line gown that felt like it was made for me. Have you considered something more elaborate? My mother asked when I showed her photos. Grace's dress was a designer original. Your brother spent a fortune to make sure she had the very best. Every conversation about the wedding seemed to circle back to Thomas and Grace's extravagant celebration 5 years earlier. Their wedding cost more than Ethan and I made in a year combined. 300 guests, a 7-tier cake, a reception at Detroit's most exclusive venue. Ethan and I were planning something much smaller. 70 guests at a charming local botanical garden, reception catered by a family-owned restaurant we loved. Our budget was modest, but perfect for the intimate celebration we envisioned. My father stayed largely absent from planning, only occasionally offering unhelpful commentary. All this fuss over a single day, he'd remarked once, especially for someone in your position. It's not like you're merging family businesses or forming advantageous connections. I tried to brush it off, focusing on the joy of planning a life with Ethan. We sent save the dates 6 months before the wedding. My parents received theirs, confirmed by my mother's text. Got your card. We'll check our schedule. As weeks passed and formal invitations went out, their response remained vague. We'll have to see, my mother would say when I asked directly. Your father has so many commitments these days. 3 months before the wedding, during a routine Sunday call, my mother casually mentioned they were finalizing plans for a family trip to Hawaii. When are you going? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Mid-June, she replied. My voice was barely a whisper. But that's my wedding weekend. Is it? She said, feigning surprise. Oh dear, I must have gotten the dates confused. Well, it's too late to change now. Thomas has already arranged time off and the children are so excited. You understand, don't you? I didn't understand. Not at all. Later that evening, I called my father directly, praying for some mistake. Dad, Mom says you've planned a family trip during my wedding weekend. There must be some misunderstanding. His response was cold, calculated. There's no misunderstanding, Autumn. We've invested a lot in this trip. Thomas has important business contacts in Hawaii, and this could be a significant opportunity for him. More significant than your daughter's wedding? I asked, my voice breaking. What he said next would replay in my mind for months to come. It's just a trivial event for someone at the bottom. Don't bother us with this. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. The bottom? I repeated. The bottom of what? You know what I mean, he replied dismissively. You and Ethan, your positions. It's not like this is a meaningful social or business occasion. It's just a small wedding for a nurse and a kindergarten teacher. I hung up without another word, tears streaming down my face. When Ethan came home and found me curled up on our couch, I could barely speak through my sobs. Your worth isn't determined by your job title or income, he said fiercely, holding me close. And our wedding is important because our love is important. If they can't see that, it's their tremendous loss. His words helped, but the pain of my father's dismissal cut deep. All my life, I had tried to earn their approval, their respect, their love. Now, I had to face the possibility that nothing I did would ever be enough. I wasn't just lower in their estimation than Thomas. I was at the bottom. That night, Ethan and I made a difficult decision. We would proceed with our wedding as planned, with or without my parents. We would celebrate our love surrounded by people who truly cared about us. Not our jobs, not our status, but us. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a roller coaster of emotions. Each morning, I woke with renewed hope that my parents would reconsider, that they would realize the magnitude of missing their daughter's wedding. Each night, I went to bed with that hope a little more diminished. I threw myself into final preparations, grateful for the distraction. My future in-laws, Margaret and Robert, stepped up in ways I never could have anticipated. They helped with everything. "We're gaining a daughter, not just a daughter-in-law," Margaret told me one evening as we addressed place cards. And we couldn't be happier about that. Her kindness made me cry, which happened frequently in those days. The contrast between her wholehearted acceptance and my own parents' rejection was stark and painful. My best friend Riley became my fiercest protector. She'd known me since college and had witnessed my ongoing struggles with my parents' favoritism. "They don't deserve you," she declared when I showed her the text from my mother confirming Hawaii. "They never have." 2 days before the wedding, a large bouquet arrived. For a breathtaking moment, I thought perhaps it was from my parents, a peace offering. Instead, the card read, "To our wonderful Autumn, we are so proud to welcome you officially into our family. With all our love, Margaret and Robert." On the morning of my wedding day, I woke early. June sunshine streamed through our window as Ethan kissed me goodbye. "Next time I see you, you'll be walking down the aisle," he whispered. Riley arrived with breakfast and champagne, determined to make the day special. My bridesmaids, colleagues from the hospital, friends from nursing school, created a bubble of love and support around me. "I brought something," said my coworker Jennifer, pulling a small blue box from her bag. "I know you mentioned not having a something borrowed." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. "It was my grandmother's," Jennifer explained. "She was a nurse, too, during World War II. She always said nursing wasn't just a profession. It was a calling. Only the strongest and most compassionate people answered it. She would have adored you." It was exactly what I needed to hear. I fastened the bracelet, drawing strength from that connection to another nurse who understood the value of my work, even if my own parents didn't. At the botanical garden, everything was beautiful. Wildflowers and soft blues and purples lined the aisle. A string quartet played quietly. Robert, Ethan's father, found me just before the ceremony. "Autumn," he said gently, "I would be honored to walk you down the aisle if you'd like, or you can walk alone, whatever feels right to you." I hadn't planned for either option, still clinging to the fantasy that my father would appear. Looking into Robert's kind eyes, I made my decision. "I think I need to do this on my own," I told him. "But would you and Margaret sit in the front row? In the seats that would have been for my parents?" "We would be honored," he said, his eyes misting. As the music changed and the guests rose, I began my solitary walk down the aisle. I had worried this moment would feel incomplete without my father. Instead, I felt a surprising sense of empowerment. Each step was a choice, a declaration that I was enough exactly as I was. When I reached Ethan and saw the love and pride shining in his eyes, I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. The ceremony was everything we had hoped for: intimate, meaningful, focused on our commitment. We wrote our own vows, promising to build a home where love and kindness were the foundation. As we exchanged rings, I felt a profound sense of peace. We were creating our own family now, one based on mutual respect and genuine care. During the reception, I danced with Robert for the father-daughter dance. "Thank you for being here," I whispered. "Thank you for being the daughter we always wanted," he replied. My colleague Carlos photographed and his partner Marcus filmed our video. They captured the joy, the laughter, the love that filled the garden. As we cut our cake and shared our dance, I was truly present, surrounded by people who had chosen to be there for us. It wasn't until the next morning, as Ethan and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, that I made the mistake of checking my phone. There, on my mother's Instagram page, was a series of videos from their Hawaii trip. "Perfect family vacation," read the caption under a sunset beach scene featuring my parents, Thomas, Grace, and their children building a sandcastle. The comments were worse. Nothing better than having the whole family together. My mother had responded to a friend's comment. The words stung like salt in an open wound. Not only had they chosen to miss my wedding, but they were publicly pretending I wasn't even part of the family. Ethan gently took the phone from my hands. "Let's turn these off for the honeymoon," he suggested. "They don't deserve space in our happiness right now." He was right. I turned off all notifications from my family's social media accounts and focused on beginning our married life. The pain didn't disappear, but I refused to let it overshadow the beautiful commitment we had made. Our honeymoon in coastal Maine became a sanctuary. Away from the noise of everyday life and the pain of family rejection, I began to heal. "What if this is a blessing in disguise?" Ethan asked one evening. "Your parents have shown you exactly who they are. No more illusions. No more hoping they'll suddenly change." His words resonated. For years, I'd been chasing approval that was never going to come. I'd been measuring my worth through their eyes, always finding myself lacking. Perhaps now I could finally stop running that impossible race. Returning home to our apartment, now officially our shared home, we began to build our married life. We established new routines and traditions, small but meaningful rituals that were uniquely ours. Sunday morning pancakes, Wednesday night board games, monthly day trips. I made a conscious decision to limit contact with my parents. I didn't block their numbers, but I stopped initiating communication. No more weekly calls. No more seeking their input. No more desperate attempts to share my life. At Riley's suggestion, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Bennett, who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions helped me process not just the wedding rejection, but a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that had damaged my self-esteem. "What your parents did was emotional abandonment," Dr. Bennett explained. "And from what you've shared, it's part of a pattern that's existed your entire life." Working with her, I began to recognize how deeply my parents' favoritism had affected me. I had internalized the idea that I was somehow less valuable, less worthy of love and attention than my brother. "You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been freely given," Dr. Bennett said. "That's not your failure. It's theirs." Ethan's family became an unexpected source of healing. Margaret called regularly, not to pry or judge, but simply to check in. Robert sent funny dad jokes via text that never failed to make me smile. They included us in family gatherings, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely wanted us there. My colleagues at the hospital, many of whom had attended our wedding, formed another crucial support system. The chief nursing officer, Barbara, pulled me aside about a month after I returned. "I've been watching your work for years, Autumn," she told me. "Your clinical skills are exceptional, but it's your compassion that truly sets you apart. We're creating a new patient advocacy program, and I'd like you to help develop it." This vote of professional confidence came at exactly the right time. I threw myself into the work, finding purpose and validation. Through my cousin Melissa, the only relative from my side who attended our wedding, I occasionally heard updates about my family. Thomas's business was apparently facing some challenges. My parents had canceled their annual winter trip to Florida, citing budget concerns. None of this information came directly from them. 6 weeks after our wedding, I noticed something unusual. The monthly loan payment from my parents didn't appear. Given everything, I initially decided to ignore it. Maybe an oversight, maybe a petty punishment. When the payment date came and went with no deposit, I sent a brief, business-like email. "I noticed the June and July loan payments haven't been made. Please advise regarding when I can expect them." No response. Not to that email, nor to a follow-up a week later. Meanwhile, my mother's social media remained active. Posts about family dinners and weekend outings, always featuring Thomas, Grace, and their children. Never any acknowledgement of my existence or the missing payments. Dr. Bennett helped me process these continued rejections without letting them reopen healing wounds. "Their behavior says everything about them and nothing about you," she reminded me. "You get to decide what role they play in your life moving forward." Ethan and I focused on building our future. We began house hunting, looking for a modest home where we might eventually start a family. We discussed adoption and fostering, both feeling drawn to providing a loving home for children who needed one. "We know what it feels like to be unwanted," I told him one night. "Maybe that understanding makes us exactly the right parents for kids who've experienced the same." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he said. "The kind who makes sure her children never doubt they're loved." As summer turned to fall, I settled into a new normal. Life without my parents' constant presence was not just manageable, but in many ways more peaceful. I no longer braced for criticism with every phone call or measured my achievements against my brothers. I was learning to see myself through my own eyes and through the eyes of people who truly valued me. Then, exactly 1 month after our wedding, my father called. The sight of his name on my screen after weeks of silence sent my heart racing. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Autumn," my father's voice was brisk. "All business. I'm calling about the deposits." I was momentarily confused. "Deposits?" "Yes," he said impatiently. "We haven't received any deposits from you for the past 2 months. I've checked with the bank. Is there a problem we should know about?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't calling about the loan payments they had missed. He was calling because he somehow expected me to be sending them money. "Dad," I said slowly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. You and Mom owe me money, not the other way around. I lent you $25,000 3 years ago, and you've been making monthly payments of $600 until recently." The line went silent for a moment. "Then that was a gift, Autumn. We're your parents." Family helps family without keeping score. My hand tightened around the phone. "It wasn't a gift. We signed a loan agreement. I have it in writing." "A technicality," he dismissed. "Look, we need you to start contributing to the family fund. Thomas is going through a rough patch with his business, and we're helping him stay afloat. As a sister, you should be doing your part." The audacity was breathtaking. "Let me get this straight," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You skipped my wedding for a vacation with Thomas. Called it a trivial event for someone at the bottom. Haven't spoken to me in over a month. Stopped making payments on money you legally owe me. And now you're calling to demand that I give you more money to help my brother?" "Don't be dramatic," my father said coldly. "This is about family responsibility. Thomas has children to support," I said. "And I have a life to build. A life you've made clear you don't value or respect." "This isn't about respect," he insisted. "It's about practical matters. Thomas needs—" "I don't care what Thomas needs," I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. "I care about the $25,000 you borrowed from me and promised to repay. I care about being treated like a member of this family instead of an ATM you can withdraw from whenever Thomas has a problem." My father's tone hardened. "I'm disappointed in you, Autumn. This selfish attitude isn't how we raised you." "No," I agreed. "You raised me to believe I was less important than my brother, less valuable. At the bottom. But I'm not accepting that anymore." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking. Within minutes, my phone began ringing again. My mother this time. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How dare you speak to your father that way?" She began without preamble. "After everything we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" I asked quietly. "We raised you, educated you, supported your decisions even when we disagreed with them," she said, her voice rising. "And now, when your family needs you, you turn your back on us. Like you turned your back on me by missing my wedding?" "That was different," she insisted. "We had prior commitments." "To a vacation that could have been scheduled any other week of the year," I pointed out. She sighed dramatically. "Autumn, you need to see the bigger picture here. Thomas is facing serious financial difficulties. His company is downsizing, and he might lose his position. They've already had to take Emma out of her private school and cancel their country club membership. They're suffering." The definition of suffering in my family had always been revealing. So Thomas might have to live like a normal person instead of the privileged one he's always been? And that's a crisis requiring my financial support? "Family supports family," she repeated my father's earlier words. "Except when that family member is me, apparently." "That's not fair," my mother protested. "We've always treated you and Thomas equally." The blatant lie was the final straw. "Mom, I have to go. Please tell Dad that I expect the loan payments to resume immediately, as per our written agreement. If I don't receive the overdue amounts within 2 weeks, I'll need to consider other options." "Are you threatening us?" she asked incredulously. "I'm establishing boundaries," I corrected, something I should have done years ago. After ending the call, I went straight to our home office and found the loan agreement. It was clear and unambiguous, signed by both my parents and dated. No mention anywhere of the money being a gift. I scanned the document and emailed it to both my parents with a brief note. As per our discussion, this is the loan agreement we all signed. Please bring the account current within 14 days. Within hours, my inbox was flooded. My father sent a terse message claiming the agreement wasn't legally binding. My mother sent a longer, emotional appeal about family loyalty and difficult times. Most surprisingly, I received a text from my brother Thomas, the first direct communication from him in months. I heard you're giving mom and dad a hard time about money. Not cool, sis. We're all struggling right now. I drafted and deleted several responses before settling on, this is between me and our parents regarding a loan I made to them 3 years ago. It has nothing to do with you. His reply came quickly. Everything in this family has to do with all of us. Mom and dad are using their retirement savings to help me right now. If you force them to pay you, you're taking food out of my kids' mouths. The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been laughable if it wasn't so infuriating. Thomas and Grace lived in a house worth over $1 million. Even with private school and country club expenses cut, they were hardly at risk of hunger. Before I could respond, I received another call from my mother. This time, her approach had shifted from guilt to bargaining. We've been thinking, she began, her voice honeyed. Perhaps we could work out a compromise. What if we reduce the monthly payments temporarily, just until Thomas gets back on his feet? The terms of the loan are already established, I replied. I'm not open to renegotiating them. But surely you can see that helping your brother is a priority right now? My priority is my own financial security and the future I'm building with Ethan, I told her. Just as your priority is clearly Thomas and his family. We've both made our choices. After a pause, her tone changed again. Your father thinks we should look into whether you coerced us into signing that agreement. We were under duress, facing foreclosure. A good lawyer might find the contract invalid. The threat was so unexpected that I laughed out loud. Are you seriously threatening to claim I somehow forced you to accept $25,000 from me? Please go ahead and make that argument in court. I'd love to hear how it goes. You've changed, Autumn, my mother said accusingly. You used to be so sweet and accommodating. I grew up, I corrected her. And I stopped accepting scraps of attention while watching you give Thomas the whole meal. The conversation ended with my mother suggesting that Ethan was behind my new attitude. Another deflection. As I hung up, I realized something important. For the first time in my life, I wasn't devastated by my parents' disapproval. I was angry, yes, but also clear-eyed and resolute. That evening, I shared everything with Ethan. His support was unwavering. You know what the craziest part is? I told him. They genuinely believe I owe them this money. That my role in the family is to provide financial support while accepting emotional neglect in return because that arrangement works for them. Ethan pointed out, they're only upset because you're disrupting a system that's benefited them for years. The next day, I received a text from Grace, my brother's wife. You're putting us in an impossible position with this loan business. The family's reputation could suffer if this becomes public. Think about your niece and nephew. The mention of Emma and Liam, children I barely knew because Thomas and Grace rarely included me in their lives, was the final manipulation tactic. I didn't dignify it with a response. Instead, I called a lawyer. It was time to stop hoping my family would do the right thing and start ensuring they had no choice. The lawyer's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, a blend of historic charm and modern efficiency. Meredith Walsh, the attorney Riley had recommended, reviewed my loan documentation with careful attention. This is actually quite straightforward, she said, looking up from the papers. The agreement is clearly worded, properly signed, and includes specific repayment terms. There's no ambiguity about this being a loan rather than a gift. My parents are suggesting they signed under duress, I explained. Meredith raised an eyebrow. Were they physically threatened? Coerced in some way? No, of course not. They needed money to avoid foreclosure. I offered to help. They accepted. That's not duress, she assured me. That's a family member extending assistance during a financial emergency. The fact that they've been making regular payments for nearly 3 years further establishes their understanding that this was a loan with repayment expectations. Her confidence was so reassuring. So what do you recommend? Given the family dynamics you've described, I suggest we start with a formal demand letter. It establishes a paper trail and demonstrates you're serious about recovering the funds. Often that's enough to prompt payment without further legal action. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. And if they don't respond? Then we discuss next steps, which could include small claims court or civil litigation, depending on your preference. But let's start with the letter and see what happens. 2 days later, I approved the final draft of the demand letter. It was professional and straightforward, outlining the loan terms, noting the missed payments, and requesting that the account be brought current within 30 days to avoid further legal action. Meredith's assistant notarized the letter before it was sent via certified mail, requiring a signature upon delivery. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about establishing boundaries and refusing to be manipulated or dismissed. While waiting for a response, I focused on areas of my life that brought joy and fulfillment. Ethan and I continued house hunting, finding a promising 3-bedroom bungalow in a neighborhood with excellent schools. At work, the patient advocacy program was gaining traction. 3 days after the demand letter was delivered, the texts and calls began. Not just from my parents, but from extended family members I rarely heard from. My Aunt Patricia. Diana is absolutely devastated by your letter. What kind of daughter hires a lawyer against her own parents? My Uncle Gerald. Your father helped pay for your nursing school? How can you be so ungrateful? My cousin Derek. The whole family is talking about this. It's embarrassing for everyone. I didn't respond to any of these messages, recognizing them as flying monkeys sent to pressure me into compliance. Dr. Bennett had warned me this might happen. When you change the dynamic by setting boundaries, those who benefited from the old system will work hard to pull you back into it, she had explained. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility to fix. A week after the letter, Grace called me directly. This was unusual. We need to talk about this situation, she began, her voice tight with controlled anger. Do you have any idea what you're doing to your family's reputation? Which part of my family, I asked. The part that skipped my wedding for a vacation, or the part that expects me to financially support my brother's lifestyle? Don't be petty, she snapped. Thomas and I have certain obligations, social commitments, a position to maintain. Your parents understand that in a way you obviously don't. You're right, I agreed, surprising her into momentary silence. I don't understand prioritizing social position over basic respect and honesty. I don't understand missing a daughter's wedding for a beach vacation. And I definitely don't understand borrowing money with no intention of paying it back. Nobody said anything about not paying it back, Grace countered. Your parents just need flexibility right now because they're helping us. And why is that my problem? She sighed dramatically. Because we're family, Autumn. Family takes care of each other. Exactly, I said. So when are you planning to take care of me? When will my needs matter to any of you? After a long pause, Grace's voice turned cold. I always told Thomas you had a chip on your shoulder. This proves it. Your jealousy is destroying this family. No, I corrected her. Your entitlement and my parents' favoritism did that long ago. I'm just finally acknowledging it. After hanging up, I forwarded all the messages I'd received to Meredith, who advised documenting everything but continuing to avoid direct engagement. Let the legal process work, she counseled. Emotional arguments only cloud the issue. 2 weeks after receiving the demand letter, my father finally responded, not to me, but to Meredith. His email was a mixture of indignation and vague threats about family matters that should remain private and potential consequences to Autumn's inheritance. Meredith forwarded his message with a note. This actually strengthens our position. He's not denying the debt exists. He's just trying to pressure you through other means. Meanwhile, my mother launched a more subtle campaign. She began posting old family photos on social media, always ones that included me. Always with captions like, missing the days when family meant everything, or nothing more precious than a daughter's love. The transparent attempt to portray herself as the wounded mother and me as the ungrateful daughter might have worked once, but therapy and distance had given me clarity. These posts weren't about love or reconciliation. They were about controlling the narrative and saving face. 3 weeks after the demand letter, as the deadline approached, I received a text from my father. We need to meet, all of us. This has gone far enough. After consulting with both Meredith and Dr. Bennett, I agreed to a meeting at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. With conditions, Ethan would accompany me. The meeting would last no more than 1 hour, and there would be no discussion of withdrawing the legal demand. My father grudgingly accepted these terms. The meeting was set for the following Saturday afternoon. As Ethan and I drove to the restaurant, he reached over and squeezed my hand. Remember, he said, you're not the same person they could manipulate before. You're stronger now. I nodded, drawing comfort from his confidence in me. I just want this resolved so we can move forward with our lives. Whatever happens in there, Ethan assured me, we're already moving forward. They can't take that from you unless you let them. With those words fortifying me, I walked into the restaurant, ready to face my family and stand firm in my truth, no matter how they tried to twist it. The private dining room at Riverside Grill felt too small for the tension it contained. My parents sat on one side of the table, Thomas and Grace on the other. Ethan and I took the remaining side, creating a triangle of opposing forces. My father spoke first, his businessman persona firmly in place. This meeting is about finding a resolution that works for everyone. The lawyer was unnecessary and inflammatory. I disagree, I replied calmly. I tried discussing this directly with you both. You dismissed my concerns and denied the existence of a loan that we all know was real. We never denied, my mother began. But I cut her off by sliding copies of my father's emails across the table. You suggested I had coerced you into signing. You implied the agreement was invalid. You called it a gift after 3 years of regular payments. If that's not denial, I don't know what is. Thomas leaned forward, his expression stern. Autumn, you need to understand the pressure our parents are under right now. My company's restructuring has created temporary cash flow issues, and they're helping us bridge the gap. I understand completely, I assured him. What you don't understand is that their financial choices are not my responsibility, neither are yours. So you'd rather see your niece and nephew suffer? Grace interjected, her voice dripping with judgment. Ethan, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. No one is suffering here except Autumn, who has been consistently devalued by this family. Your children attend private school. You live in $1 million home. You took a luxury vacation to Hawaii instead of attending our wedding. Your definition of suffering is most people's definition of privilege. My father's face reddened. You have no right to speak to us this way. This is a family matter. Ethan is my family, I said firmly. The family I've chosen. The family that shows up for me. We've always been there for you, my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. We've supported you through everything. When? I challenged. When have you ever prioritized me over Thomas? When have you ever celebrated my achievements without comparing them to his? When have you ever respected my choices? The room fell silent as my questions hung in the air. Finally, Thomas spoke, his voice unusually subdued. What do you mean they borrowed money from you? I turned to him in surprise. The $25,000 I lent them 3 years ago when they were facing foreclosure. That's what this entire situation is about. Thomas looked genuinely confused. You lent them $25,000? I didn't know that. They told me they asked you, I said slowly, but you couldn't help because of your expenses. My brother's expression shifted from confusion to anger as he turned to our parents. You told me you took out a home equity loan. You never said anything about borrowing from Autumn. My parents exchanged a look that confirmed everything. They had been lying to both of us, telling me they had approached Thomas, telling him they had secured bank financing. We didn't want to worry you, my father told Thomas. You were dealing with Emma's school issues at the time. So you borrowed from Autumn instead? A nurse's salary? Thomas shook his head in disbelief. And now you're using the money you're supposed to be repaying her to help me? It's complicated, my mother said weakly. No, Thomas countered. It's not complicated at all. It's wrong. The revelation shifted the entire dynamic in the room. For the first time, Thomas was seeing our parents' favoritism from the outside and recognizing the unfairness of it. You should have told me, he continued. I would never have accepted your help if I'd known it was coming at Autumn's expense. My father attempted to regain control. The point is, we need to find a solution that works for everyone. Perhaps a revised payment schedule? The point, I interrupted, is that you borrowed money with specific repayment terms. You've missed multiple payments, and instead of honoring your obligation, you tried to manipulate and gaslight me into forgetting about it altogether. That's not fair, my mother protested. What's not fair, Ethan said quietly, is missing your daughter's wedding and then expecting her to fund your lifestyle choices. The meeting continued for another tense 30 minutes. Gradually, as Thomas continued to side with me rather than our parents, their position weakened. By the end, my father agreed to resume the original payment schedule and make up the missed payments within 60 days. I'll put it in writing, he said stiffly, his pride clearly wounded. That would be best, I agreed, maintaining the professional distance that seemed to be the only healthy way to interact with them. As we prepared to leave, Thomas pulled me aside. I had no idea, he said, his voice low, about the loan or any of it, really. The way they've treated you, the wedding, all of it. I studied my brother's face, seeing genuine regret there. I believe you, I said finally. But that doesn't change what happened. No, he agreed. It doesn't, but maybe it can change what happens next. Over the following weeks, my parents complied with the terms we had agreed upon. The missed payments were deposited, and regular monthly payments resumed. My father sent all communication through Meredith, maintaining a coldly professional tone that was actually a relief after years of emotional manipulation. Thomas, surprisingly, began reaching out independently, first with brief texts checking in, then with an invitation for Ethan and me to meet him, Grace, and the children for lunch. The lunch was awkward but civil, with Thomas making a noticeable effort to ask about my work and our house hunting progress. As the money from the repaid loan accumulated in our account, Ethan and I made a decision. Rather than using it for ourselves, we established a scholarship fund for nursing students, focusing on patient advocacy. It felt right to transform money that had caused so much pain into something that would create opportunity and healing. 3 months after our confrontational family meeting, we closed on our new home. A charming 3-bedroom bungalow with a fenced backyard, perfect for the children we hope to have someday. As we moved in our furniture and began making the house our own, I felt a profound sense of peace. We were building our life on our terms, free from the weight of expectations and obligations that had never served me. My relationship with my parents evolved into something I never expected, a limited, carefully boundaried connection based on mutual respect rather than emotional entanglement. They were not invited to our housewarming party, but they did send a card, a small gesture that would have been unremarkable from anyone else, but represented significant progress from them. For his part, Thomas began the slow process of examining his own role in our family's dysfunction. During a rare coffee meeting just between the two of us, he admitted, "I never questioned why I always got more. It was easier to believe I deserved it somehow." "That's how privilege works," I told him. "It's invisible to those who have it." He nodded slowly. "I'm trying to do better with Emma and Liam, making sure they understand that worth isn't measured by achievement or status." It was a start. Not forgiveness exactly, but an opening for something new to grow. 6 months after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. The joy Ethan and I felt was complicated by questions about how to involve my family. After much discussion and consultation with Dr. Bennett, we decided on clear boundaries. They could be grandparents, but only if they respected our parenting decisions and treated us with consistent respect. "Our child will never feel ranked or valued based on achievements," I told my parents when we shared the news. "They will be loved unconditionally, exactly as they are." My mother seemed genuinely moved by this. "I want to do better," she said quietly. "With your child, with you." "Actions, not words," I reminded her. "That's what I'll be watching for." When our daughter Lily was born the following spring, my parents waited to be invited to visit rather than assuming their right to be there. They brought modest, thoughtful gifts instead of the extravagant displays they had shown with Thomas's children. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The greatest gift of this difficult journey has been the freedom to define family on my own terms. Ethan's parents continue to be a blessing in our lives, showing Lily what unconditional grandparent love looks like. My colleagues at the hospital, particularly Barbara, who became Lily's honorary grandmother, create a community of support and belonging. And Riley, who stood by me through every challenge, is now Lily's godmother and my unwavering friend. "You taught me what it means to stand up for yourself," she told me recently. Your daughter is lucky to have that example. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents. Some wounds heal completely, others leave scars that change how we move through the world. What I do know is that I've broken a cycle that could have continued for generations. My daughter will grow up knowing her inherent value doesn't depend on comparison or competition. She will never be at the bottom of anything, especially not her family's love. If you've ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or less than in your own family, please know you are not alone and you deserve better. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your well-being. And sometimes the family you create through choice and love is more nurturing than the one you were born into. Thank you for listening to my story.